Macmillan Audio presents A Bad Day for Sorry by Sophie Littlefield. Read for you by Kym Dakin.
Prologue. Whoopin' ass wasn't so hard, Stella Hardesty thought. As she took aim with a little Raven 25 she took off a cheating son of a bitch in Kansas City last month. What was hard was making sure it stayed whooped, especially on a day when it hit 100 degrees before noon, and you were having hot flashes. And today's quote on your calendar for women who do too much read, "Find serenity in unexpected places." "Fuck serenity," Stella said, and she shot the trailer. Chapter 1. Stella knew from experience that Roy Dean Shaw wasn't a particularly brave young buck, but then the ones who smacked their women around rarely were. Hunting him down was going to consume a sizable chunk of her day off, and Stella was plenty annoyed. She only took Sundays and Tuesdays off from the sewing machine shop, and lately her sideline business was eating into her free time. Today, for instance, she'd had to cancel an appointment down at Hairlines, Cut and Color, for the second time, and she hadn't done laundry all week. It didn't help Stella's mood any that menopause had kicked into high gear now that her 50th birthday had come and gone. If widowhood had given Stella license to explore her authentic self, menopause stood under the window, yelling at the bitch to come out and rumble. She felt like biting the heads off kittens, though that might actually be an asset today, given the talk she needed to have with Roy Dean. A month ago, shortly after their first meeting, Roy Dean had called to give her his new address. It was one of the rules. All of her parolees were required to inform her of any change in their personal information. Besides address and phone number, they were required to report all their income sources and what they did in their leisure time, and, most important, any new relationships with the fairer sex. Reporting back to Stella was not optional, but her parolees were usually anxious to comply. First meetings with Stella tended to have that effect. Second meetings, if a parolee was dim-witted enough to require one, put any lingering doubts to rest. Stella wasn't bound by all the bureaucratic red tape that real parole officers had to wade through. She didn't have to fill out paperwork. She didn't report to a boss. She didn't have to appear in court. And she could make the parolees tell her any damn thing she wanted to know. She couldn't, however, always make them tell the truth. Stella had no doubt that the address Roy Dean had given her, on Cedar Street in Harrisonville, existed. She'd even lay odds that Roy Dean or one of his relatives had lived there at some point. But a punk like Roy Dean would never give her a fact. If he could spin her some fiction instead, it was in his blood. After a late breakfast of Pop-Tarts slathered with peanut butter, Stella made a half-hearted effort to get the laundry started and paid a few bills from the bottom of the stack. Then she set out to track down Roy Dean. She found a lead an hour later in a dank and yeasty booth in the back of the High Timer. The place was little more than a squat shed at the intersection of a couple of farm roads 5 miles out of town, but it was popular with local bikers, and Jello Man Nunn was exactly where she thought he'd be, enjoying a lunch of Polish sausages, sizzled in the deep fryer, and a mug of Busch. Jello Man was happy to see her, folding her into a hug that mashed her face against his greasy leather vest and tickled her forehead with his long, scratchy gray beard. He was even happier to tell her what he knew. Jello Man, it turned out, had been to Roy Dean's new place to extract payment.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?